Guide for the today is Mr. Prakash. We'll be recording this session because today there is one also a movie being hosted by Marathi movie is being hosted. So quite a few guys are requested for recording. And our today's mentor is Mr. Prakash. And to just give you brief on Mr. Prakash, Mr. Prakash is a software consultant and DJ musician by profession. Okay, and he has been fascinated by photography for a long time, and he's a self-taught. He has been experimenting himself and training himself and attending a lot of courses. His forte is mainly a portrait, landscapes, and basically what he loves to capture is the emotions while doing the portraits. To tell you, he is very esteemed person, and he has been featured on the Nikon's top 10 photographers of the Middle East and North Africa, and later on he was also nominated thrice for the top 30 photographers in Middle East and Africa. Okay, so Mr. Prakash, we are so thankful to you for preparing your entire presentation and the slides that you are going to show it to us today. And on behalf of entire Pratimanche group, I welcome you, and I'm sure you all can note down whatever he's telling us today, and so that it becomes a reference guide after some time. And Mr. Prakash, once your presentation is through, we will have a question answer session, which will be backed up with Mr. Ashish. Thank you, Ashish, for joining from India. Ashish has been one of the founder members. Besides that, he is a professor of photography and he's a consulting photographer to a couple of universities also in Maharashtra. We are Mr. Manjunath Pai, welcome to you. And he has been there throughout our journey, and he's one our mentor where everybody feels so free as he's so approachable, and your tips and your guidance has always been helping us, sir. So welcome, and I request Mr. Prakash to take on from here, and over to you, Mr. Prakash.
Thank you so much, Yogesh ji, for the beautiful introduction. And yes, we're really happy to have some lovely people over here, especially Ashish ji from India and Manjunath bro. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. It's been a long time, 2 years we've been off because of COVID, so there's hardly been any shooting. We were not allowed to go outside. And thereafter, as things eased off now, well, things have just about resumed a little bit. But of course, summer has just started kicking in, so I think outdoor shooting is going to be highly limited, at least in this part of the world. But well, it's just a matter of another 4 or 5 months more, and I think we'll be back. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining, and I'd like to really thank you all for having me on this platform and having me share my knowledge with all of you all, whatever little bit experiences I have. It's all about sharing. It's all about learning. I'm learning from you all equally as much as you all probably would pick up a few things from me. So without any further ado, I think let's get cracking. Let's get started. Are you okay, guys? Shall we start off?
Yes, we can.
Right. Let me just share my screen. And is my screen visible?
Yes. No, not yet, not yet. Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay. So what is portrait photography? Great portrait photography is a result of combining the right technique with an artist's expression. First practiced by artists such as Picasso, portrait paintings have a great history of storytelling. Okay, well, let me just tell you one thing, that portrait photography has permeated, has percolated down from the ancient artists and painters from the Renaissance area and probably before that. So it's really, we get our inspiration, we get our background, we get everything from those painters. Now, I must admit that painting is far, far, far more difficult as compared to photography. But, well, photography itself is an art and it's got its own nuances. And today we're talking about that part of it. But it's good to know that We have to learn from painters and artists of yore. Now, let's just touch upon a couple of them. I'm sure you all have seen the Mona Lisa, and you must be knowing about Leonardo da Vinci. It's one of his most famous portraits.
Now we are back to the grid.
Okay, now?
Now, yes, done.
Okay,
done.
lovely, done.
Mabrook.
Shall we get on, guys? Thank you so much for
Yeah.
walking me through this.
Yes.
Okay, done. So, I explained about portrait photography. It's got its roots, its ancestry from painters of yore. And I explained about the Mona Lisa. Would you like me to re-explain about the Mona Lisa or no need?
No.
Maybe you can start from the first slide itself.
Okay, fine. So, about the Mona Lisa, if you look at both her arms, they are joined at the bottom and how they lead up towards her shoulders, towards the neck. And from the neck, it leads up to her head. It forms a triangle, which is a beautiful composition. And if you look at the light from the top left, that creates just about enough difference between the light and shadows to add depth to the image. I want to share my cursor. Can you see my mouse cursor?
Yep.
You
Yes.
can see my mouse cursor, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Then there's no need. Right. Here's another very, very, very famous and popular painter, Vincent van Gogh. And he painted at least 35 self-portraits. Are we on? Are we okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Vincent van Gogh has painted at least 35 self-portraits, and he used to practice painting people. While doing self-portraits, he wasn't just mastering the technical aspect of portraiture, he was also using them as a tool for self-exploration. Now, as a photographer, you can do that too, because you won't always have subjects in front of you. You will have to probably put your camera on a tripod, visualize yourself over there, take a test shot, go back behind the camera, check it back, go back in front, be the model, and there'll be back and forth, back and forth. You need to practice on yourself and up your game before you finally go in public and start shooting other people. This would really help to get better results from the get-go. Right. After that, we've got Rembrandt. Rembrandt again is very, very famous, and he's got his own signature style of lighting. He is known as the painter of light, and his color palette primarily included dark and earthy colors. If you, I don't know if how many of you all know, but Rembrandt lighting is characterized by, if you look under this eye over here, you'll see a triangle. That triangle is the signature of Rembrandt lighting. And he's been extremely famous, and a lot of people have been following him. A lot of people have been inspired by him. And it's used very, very heavily as far as portrait photography goes. Okay, this is one of my favorites. It's by Johannes Vermeer, The Milkmaid. Now, he used to paint people, basically very ordinary people in their everyday lives, during their domestic activities and things like that. This particular painting has been discovered or rediscovered, I would say, further down the line, and people have been following it a lot. If you have a look at this painting, you have a look at the light coming in from the window. What makes it so special is the light coming in from the window. You notice over here how the light, this part is in shadow. It's because of this wall. There's no light coming in from here, therefore the light is not till here. And then how there's gradation of light from here to here. And then the light spills over and becomes brighter later. These guys did not have anything to go by. They only went with their eyes and what they perceived with their eyes. So special. Have a look at the gradations of light, the different textures over here, which portions are in shadow over here, which portions over here are in light. Have a look at the forearm over here, how the top part is lit and the underside is in shadow. It's absolutely amazing. They didn't have anything to refer to. Okay, now moving ahead, what is portrait photography? It's the art of capturing the inherent character of your subject within a photograph. And you have to combine that with the right technique and the artist's expression. By technique, we mean your current and correct camera settings, your compositions, your angles, your lighting, your backdrops, and things like that. As far as the portion is concerned, we're talking about getting something that's emotive, something which can reach out and evokes feelings in a viewer, and it captures their attention and holds their gaze over there. Great portrait photography is as much about following the rules and guidelines as it is about breaking the mold. So, as we move forward, I'll be presenting an exhaustive list of best practices and techniques on how you can take good portraits. And before we do that, I have to pay homage to one of the best photographers and somebody of whom I'm a huge fan, Steve Mccurry. No talk about portrait photography would be complete without this iconic photograph, which was shot by Steve Mccurry somewhere on the Afghan border. It came on the cover of National Geographic in June 1985, and it's been epic ever since. The lady on the cover, I think she was around 12 years old, if I mistake not. Her name is Sharbat Gula. And her eyes, her penetrating gaze absolutely captured everybody's attention. When Steve Mccurry was shooting this particular photo, there was a lot of dust swirling around him. And in those days, of course, it was only film photography. There was nothing digital. And he shot this photograph, and you can see that red scarf over there also. He got her gaze. And when he came back home and he developed his films and he had a look, he sifted through all his frames and he saw this, he knew that he had got something. He went up to his editor and showed it to his editor. His editor literally leaped from his seat and said, "This is epic, and this is going to come on the cover of our next issue of National Geographic." Of course, I don't think I need to mention anything further after that. This made history. In fact, I had just come in 1986 to Oman, and I got myself a copy of National Geographic, and I remember looking at this, and I was so fascinated by this, I couldn't get my eyes off it. Well, y'all can go through these slides a little bit later. This just recounts exactly what I've spoken about. This was, as I mentioned, Sharbat Gula. She was a Pashtun orphan in the Nasir Bagh refugee camp. And you can read this later. I don't want to repeat because I've almost mentioned everything. Now, top 16 portrait photography trips. Focus on the subject. Find the right location. I won't read all of them because I'll be going through each one of them individually and expanding on them. So this frame, you could probably pause in the video, and if you want, take a screenshot for a summarized version later. Let's move on with the first topic, focus on the subject. Now, the subject is the most important aspect of your portrait photography. You have basically your subject, and you could be having some other, besides your main subject, you could be having other add-on subjects on the side. And then, of course, you have your background. But your main subject is the most important and most essential if you want to get a successful portrait. So do take time out to connect with your client or with your subject before each photo shoot. And if possible, meet up with them in person prior to your shoot. Get to know them a bit, probably sit down with them over a coffee or a small bite and just talk about things at random. Discuss your ideas also, what you have in mind for the shoot. Find out what they are looking for, their preferences, and probably y'all could find some middle ground where y'all could satisfy each other's needs. Now, even if you are familiar with the person being photographed, people can really feel uncomfortable once they're in front of the camera because they really tend to freeze. They don't know what to do with their hands, with their shoulders, with their neck, with the different limbs of their body. They don't know what angle to stand on, what kind of a look should they give. Should they smile? Should it be a half smile? Should it be just a random frozen look or a soft look? So this is something which you need to keep while you're shooting with them. You're looking at them, peering at them through your viewfinder. You need to keep talking with them, coaching them, making them feel more at ease and telling them what you would like, what looks good. And in between, if you've captured a couple of good frames, walk up to them, let them have a look at what you've captured so they feel nice about it, and then go back and continue from there. Okay. Finding the right location. The location is very, very crucial in this. If you're shooting in natural light, you have to make sure as to where the light is. Is the light behind your subject? Is it in front of your subject? So you have to plan the weather. It could be raining, it could be cloudy. You have to plan the time of the day, and of course all your environment conditions, because as the day progresses, the light is going to get harsher. If we talk about early morning, just post sunrise, you have the golden hour, very soft light coming in. It's beautiful for taking nice soft portraits. The sun is very low, somewhere at the 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock angle, and very soft light comes through, which is very pleasing, and it shows subjects in their best light. Avoid shooting in direct sunlight as it produces harsh shadows and can make your subject squint very often. Choose early mornings or late afternoons, as I mentioned, when the sunlight gets diffused, as it's closer towards the horizon, and you'll get a lovely, warm, and natural glow. Of course, you can exercise much more control if you are shooting indoors, because over there you can have artificial light. You can combine artificial light along with natural light too. And you can plan the mood, and you can plan the model's clothes, the backdrops, etc. etc. Once again, getting the location right can save you a lot of trouble with fixing images in post processing. Because just imagine if you've got the light behind the subject's face is going to be in the dark. You're going to have to do a lot of post processing to pick up, to again brighten those faces, but even then, you won't get that punch. So please get your location right, get your time of the day right, see your subject, make sure your subject is complementing the surroundings and the background, the environment. For example, clothes. If you are wearing green and you're shooting amongst plants or in a forest, what the subject is wearing will not stand out against the background. So this is another point you have to consider. Okay, getting the pose right. Now this again is very important. Your subject does not know how to pose unless, of course, they are professional models. You take a professional model, they know exactly which angle to pose, which side of their face looks good, and how to keep their hands, their fingers, their limbs, etc., to get the best curves and the best angles for photography. Now, after you have found the right pose for your subject, you could probably maybe download a few sample poses from the internet, sit with your subject, like I mentioned, a couple of days before your shoot, go over which poses, leave a copy of that with your subject so they can practice some poses. And then when you finally are at the shoot, your subject can give you 1, 2, 3, 4. They can keep switching and moving back and forth between different poses while you keep clicking until, of course, you get just the right picture. A small tip, keep a gallery of creative portrait photography shots on your mobile phone and keep adding benchmark photos to this gallery. It will help you big time in figuring out various options that would work in the shoot there and then. I always have been following this from day one, and I still do it till date. In fact, even before, say for example, even if I'm going to shoot a landscape also, I first go on recce on the net, different photographs, what other people have shot. So I get to see things from their perspective also. Have a look at that. I get inspired by their photographs. Then finally I go over there. I start shooting with those angles which I have shortlisted. And then I try and find something of my own. I look around and try and get my stamp of my individuality. So just remember, guys, posing is very important to getting that perfect picture. There are so many factors, like I mentioned. You're getting your location right, you're getting the time of the day right, getting the light correctly, getting your expressions of your subject, getting them to have the right pose. When all these fall together and amalgamate into one seamless package, you end up coming up with a beautiful image. Okay, taking candid portrait photos. Now, a portrait photo is technically, it is not candid, or I would say rather, candid photo is not a portrait. Candid photos are just photos which are taken when people are unaware. You're shooting them. The best part of taking candid photographs is that people who freeze up in front of the camera, they've got camera fright. They do not know what to do, how to pose, and how much ever you try, they're just not able to loosen up. In such a case, candid photography would be the way to go. You have different options, like probably giving them some props so they feel more comfortable with props. I'll be coming to all these points a little later down also. You can probably add somebody else in the shot, have them talking to somebody. You could keep chatting with them while you're clicking them. So, getting your subjects comfortable and shooting them during their usual natural activities can yield you very, very natural and fantastic portrait shots. People who are not able to pose or not comfortable, you'll have to keep talking with them and just getting them to be as natural as possible, as if they're chatting with you, like I mentioned. And well, you'll get your most natural candid photographs. A small tip out here: if you use a longer zoom lens to step out of the immediate vicinity, the subject may lose their shyness, because when you are quite close to your subject and you have your big DSL camera with your lenses trained on them, they tend to feel a little bit overwhelmed. So as you go back with a long lens, probably shooting at 200 mm or greater, you have that distance. The only problem is when you're shooting at a long lens, you'll probably have to end up shouting to give them instructions. So there's a little trade-off over there, but you got to keep exploring all these options, see what works, and go with that. Now, capturing emotions and expressions. Whenever you are photographing a subject, we're talking about human beings here primarily at the moment. It's the emotion of the subject and the expression of the subject that is really, really what counts. Having something artistic and getting your subject to emote isn't easy. So make sure that you avoid fake smiles. And even if the person is giving fake smiles, you probably got to just walk them through it, chat with them, maybe crack a funny joke, and get them to probably be ready for them. So they probably break into natural laughter, and you got to keep clicking. Sometimes if you speak about something, if you know the subject pretty well and you speak about a time in which you'll spare together, maybe you'll have gone to a particular place, a particular location, and something special happened over there, you will see a particular glint in their eye. That's the moment the eyes will sparkle. Bingo. That's your time. You click and you get that shot. So work with your subject, give them time. You cannot force them. You cannot use compulsion to get this to work. Be patient and you will end up with good results. Of course, this photograph back, when we are talking about expressions, if you look at her gaze, her face is virtually expressionless, and yet it speaks volumes. You look at her eyes are the focal point of this image. Why? Because A, she's got big eyes. Look at that green color over there. The pupils are slightly dilated over here, and it contrasts very nicely against the whites of her eyes. And her eyes have this penetrating gaze. It just looks at you and goes right through you. You cannot get your eyes off it. Once she looks at you, it's arresting. This gaze is arresting. So once again, I still mention, capture the emotions and expressions of your subject. Okay. Now, need I mention this? This, of course, is the most basic thing, but you must learn how to use your camera. You have an instrument with you which is complex and which has got so many subtle nuances under the hood. You need to really delve deep by starting on the surface, drilling down and delving deep, and getting to know as much about your camera as possible. You should be so comfortable with all the controls that as your subject changes the mood, as the location changes, you should know what to keep changing, what to keep flipping back and forth to get different results, to get different feels. So yes, I will tell you, get yourself a decent DSLR camera that would give you control over portrait photography settings and give you sharp, high resolution images. And I will tell you, definitely always shoot in RAW. If you want, you can also shoot in RAW plus JPEG. So you have tentatively a ready-made JPEG file just to have a look at, but you must shoot with RAW under the hood because that gives you so much of bandwidth during post-processing. Experiment with your camera settings so that you understand your tools, you know your tools, and you're able to capture your subject in their best light with so many different nuances and a lot of variety too. Okay. Now, choosing the right lens for portrait photography. Those of you who have got DSLR or mirrorless cameras, this part is for you. But for those of y'all who do not and have just mobiles, don't worry, I've got a separate section for that. Mobile cameras are extremely powerful these days, and you can get amazing pictures. And it's a lovely learning ground. It's a great testing bed also before you move on to bigger and better equipment. Coming back to the right lens for portrait photography. As we all know, the camera lens would be extremely vital in getting the right shot. Now, there is really technically no best lens for portrait photography. So it's up to you to decide which lens fits the scenario best. Now, if you are going for a shot where the scenery or the background is crucial to the entire image, then you would probably go with a wide angle lens. We would generally call that something like an environmental portrait. So in an environmental portrait, the background is as important, it's as essential as your main subject. And you want to capture that because you're trying to show your subject with some relevance to the background. In such a case, then definitely you must use a wide angle lens. A medium telephoto lens, something like 85 mm or 105 or 135 mm, would enable you to strike a balance between your model and the background. 85 mm lenses are very, very popular for portrait photography, but let me tell you, so are 105 and 135 mm lenses too. They're all amazing. Try and look for lenses with a shallow depth of field, I mean with a great aperture. For example, if it's something like 1.8 or 1.4 or even 1.2, you will be able to walk away with a great bokeh or bokeh, depending upon how you pronounce it. It refers to that blur behind your subject when you're able to use a shallow depth of field, something like at 1.4 or 1.2 or maybe 1.8 also. You are technically able to blur out the background and get a creamy background behind. That is known as bokeh or bokeh. Now, besides the 85, 105 or 135 mm, even a 70-200 would be an excellent choice. It's a beautiful lens and enables you to zoom in and focus more on your subject. You get a very, very compressed viewpoint. And you can, of course, because of getting a compressed image, it won't be looking out this angle, it'll be looking out at this angle at your subject. You'll be able to avoid a lot of distractions on the side. So once again, 85 mm, 105 mm, 135 mm, 70-200. Now, before that, for those people who do not have and have just purchased a DSLR, nowadays, of course, since the last few years, DSLRs and mirrorless have been coming with some small zooms. But prior to that, they used to come with something known as a 50 mm lens. Usually, it used to be 50 mm 1.8. That would be your kit lens. It's also known as the Nifty 50. Why is the 50 mm lens so iconic? Because A, it is cheap. It's very cheap. B, its quality is amazing because it's manufactured en masse. Therefore, due to economies of scales, it's cheap. The quality is fantastic, and 50 mm 1.8 being the cheapest, usually you get 1.4 and 1.2 also. And I've also seen something going down to 0.95. But any which way, at 1.8 also you can get an amazing, amazing bokeh from that. So this Nifty 50, which is available to almost everybody, or even if you go to purchase it today, it's very, very cheap. You can start off with that. Only thing is that you won't be able to take very, very tight headshots. Something like this, get in very, very close to your subject. You'll probably have to satisfy yourself with waist up to waist length, maybe half body shots. Otherwise, you'll end up seeing some distortion in the face. Let's move on and look at some more lenses in general. As I mentioned over here, the 50 mm. It's one of the cheapest lenses, one of the best lenses, and I'm not going to repeat myself. This lens is amazing. It's available for very cheap, and if you go for secondhand, buying it secondhand, you can get it really dirt cheap off the market. Buy it, practice with it, and nowadays, with as I mentioned, you'll have to go a bit at the back and shoot from waist up at least. The good part is that you can crop into your subject because most of the cameras today are 24 megapixels and above. So you'll end up getting a tight headshot with a good bokeh too. After the Nifty 50, I spoke about the 85 mm. I'd like to specify at this point, this was Nikon over here, and this one over here is Canon. There are several ones. You have Nikon, you have Canon, you got Sony, you have Fuji, you have Olympus. There are so many makes, so many brands available. I am not saying yes or no for any of them. They're all good. Do your own R&D, find out which one works for you, which is available at a good price, and go for that. This is your 85 lens for Canon, and it's 1.4, so it gives you a beautiful bokeh when you shoot it at it. You shoot with it wide open. It's amazing. This is the Nikon 105 This is probably among one of the most outstanding portrait lenses. Because of the focal length of 105, you can go a little bit tighter than the 85 almost probably just a little bit, say half chest shots. Okay, with the 85, again, I would not suggest you to go too close. There may be a little bit slight distortion in the face, probably on the nose, on the cheeks, and all that. With 105, you can go closer. And of course, then you have the granddaddy, the 7200, usually at 2.8. This is an amazing lens. And of course, when you're shooting close to 200 wide open at 2.8, you're going to get an excellent bokeh and beautiful, beautiful compression in your images. You can go really tight into headshots or probably even part of your subject's faces with almost zero distortion. Go over these slides, see as to how they perform. I've mentioned the pros and the cons of each one of them. Just do remember that this 7200, while you do have lots of pros, there are also some cons because it is a heavy lens. And if you're having a long drawn out portrait session, your arm is going to be, you got to be doing some weights and you got to be gymming for some time. Okay, but it's a great lens. Right, now the background matters. The focus in portraiture, as expected, is on the subject model. However, there are more intricacies than that. Sometimes an interesting background can add a lot of drama to the photograph and help your subject stand out. In most cases, though, blurring the background can correctly add more emphasis to the subject. Okay, so if there are a lot of distractions, let's say, for example, your subject is standing maybe in a garden, and somehow you don't want the background of the garden to be that visible. So you open your aperture, say to 2.8, depending on what lens you have, 1.8, 1.4, 1.2. And by focusing, of course, you always focus on your subject's eyes. Always remember, that is your focal point. Whenever you're focusing on your subject, it is the eyes which are most crucial. So you focus on that, and by having your aperture wide open, you'll be able to almost throw the background out of focus to such an extent that it will just be buttery smooth and just some colors. It'll almost not be discernible. But then, on the other hand, there are certain backgrounds which are very essential and they add to the subject, they complement the subject. What happens is that, for example, especially if you're taking an environmental portrait, you want to know as to what your portrait is, where your portrait is, what your portrait is doing. And having the background visible and adding value to your subject tells a story. It's very, very important in that case. So your aperture should be set accordingly, your lens should be chosen accordingly, and you got to frame your subject accordingly, depending upon what you want it to be. Let's move on to the next slide. Now this was one of my images that made it to the top 30 first in Nikon portraiture, and then it came in the top 10 after that in Nikon Middle East and Africa. And yes, you must be wondering, why am I showing this as a portrait? Because portraits are not only about human beings, they're also about animals. And although I had submitted 3 of them, all 3 images came in the top 30, but this one finally got selected in the top 10. This is a photograph of a yak at Pangong Beach in Ladakh. I think this was shot in 2015, probably June or July 2015. And it's so important to know that this yak was standing right on the banks of the lake. And well, if you see the hills, the clouds, and the lake itself, they all add perspective. So this technically is a prime example of an environmental portrait. Now we go over here. This is shot at the Muscat festival. This is of an Omani lad. He was sitting in a tent, and I went up and I took a headshot of his, just a little bit above the chest. If you notice over here, I have used a very shallow aperture. Look at his arm. This portion of his arm over here, which I'm highlighting, and the cane that he's holding. You know, Omanis hold canes in their hand. It's part of their traditional outfit. This part has been thrown out of focus. And even the background over here, which is probably the tent, the design of the tent in which he's sitting, has been blurred out. In fact, if you see, the depth of field is so shallow, his kandura, his white robe, is also blurred out. It's just his turban and his eyes, which are absolutely in sharp focus. You'll ask me, why is the turban in focus too? Because it's in the same plane. Understand what's the plane. When you say you have your subject, this is my hand. If you want my hand to be in focus and you're focusing on my eyes, it has to be in the same plane. That is over here. This is the same plane. We are moving in this way. It's in the same plane. If I move it over here, it's not in the same plane. And if you focused on my eye, using a very shallow aperture, my hand would be blurred. Similarly, my hand being at the back of my head over here would be blurred if you're using a very shallow aperture. Having me in the same plane when you focused on my eye would ensure that even my palm is sharp. So if you have a look, this is it. His eyes, they're in sharp focus. Okay. And then, of course, we have this. This is another shot of an Omani lady. I had an assignment in one of the malls. This was a cosmetic shop going by the name of MAC, M-A-C. It's a Canadian company, and they had contacted me from Canada, and they wanted me to go and shoot their outlets at 3 different malls, 3 locations. So she was in the mall, in the shop, and after I finished shooting the shop with all the, you could say, with all the items on display over there, all the paraphernalia and all their products lined up over there, she requested me to do a portrait of hers. So I shot this in natural available light because I wasn't prepared. I had not got any other lenses for that. You're normally shooting architectural shots with wide angle. I hadn't brought my portrait lens. So I went a little bit at the back and I shot her. And then, of course, I cropped it in. During post-production, of course, I used a shallow aperture over here. During post-production, I've darkened the periphery over here. All this portion has been darkened, and you can see this little bit light that's infiltrating behind her, which is stronger, has seeped through, but it's completely blurred out, and it adds to the image. So you can, yes, and post-processing, which I will come to later, is an integral part and very, very crucial and important part of your photography. Okay, so coming back, flipping back, the background matters. I'm repeating, the background matters. A over here, your background is crisp, sharp, and completely in focus. It's an environmental portrait. It adds to the subject and tells a story. Over here, we have used a shallow depth of field. The background matters, and yet it doesn't matter because I've thrown it out of focus. Entire subject is just on the face of the subject, his eyes, that gaze of his. And then over here, again, we have something similar, shallow depth of field, and she's been shot. The rest of the stuff has been darkened because it wasn't important. It was detracting and adding too much of clutter to the image. Right. Now, understanding how shutter speed, aperture, and ISO work together. I don't know how many of you all know about something known as the exposure triangle. It's known as an exposure triangle because there are three crucial factors that make up this exposure triangle. A triangle usually has got 3 points, and that's what this simulates. One, of course, is your aperture. The other one is your shutter speed. The third is your ISO. Light that enters your camera and shows you or paints your subject and displays it to you is adjusted through your shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. So you need to know how these 3 work in conjunction and how to use them correctively against and in combination in conjunction with each other to get just the kind of image you're looking for. You have an aperture As I mentioned, you have an aperture, you're shooting on an aperture wide open on 1.4, you've blurred out your background, you got a creamy bokeh. Just change your aperture from maybe 1.4, go into f8 or f11, and suddenly your subject, along with the entire background, is pin sharp, tack sharp, razor focus. Now it tells a different story. It's your subject along with its background. So please know as to how these three settings work on your camera, get to know them, and then it will help you to get better photographs. Okay, design a color palette for your portrait shots. By designing a color palette, you need to know first of all as to what is your background. What is the color of your background? The time of day at which you're shooting will also make a difference. You could be shooting early morning in the golden hour, you'll have very, very soft yellow light coming through, golden light coming through. You could be shooting very late in the evening or very early in the morning at the blue hour. That will again give a completely different hue and a completely different variety, a different look for your image. The props that you will be having and using for your shot, the clothes of the background, the clothes of your subject, all these have to be complementing each other to come up with the correct image and to get something good. Now, for example, family portrait photography images look great in warm hues and in greens, whereas business and portrait shots look very impressive in dark blues and grays. So if you are going to use something like a smoke bomb, let's say, in your photography, then make sure it too is part of your color palette, as most of your shot would be covered in smoke. So remember, guys, it's your background, it's your subject, it's the colors of the subject, the props, the time of the day, the lighting, etc. All these must fall into place, must amalgamate together to give you the perfect shot, because they'll be complementing, they'll be working alongside each other. This is a typical shot. This is more of a, I would say, this is a, it's a fashion shot, you would say. And they've used colored gels over here for a particular reason. One side you've got cold colors and blues, on the other side you've got warm colors. And this was shot having a particular style in mind for a particular theme. It does work. It depends upon how you want it, how you like it. Once again, your color palette has to be harmonious. They got to work, everything, every element in your frame has to work together harmoniously to get a good frame. Okay. Right, lighting for portrait photography. Give me a moment, guys. I'll just hydrate a bit. I hope everything's okay so far. I'm clearly audible and you can understand what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Very much.
Lovely. We'll have the Q&A session later. Okay. So, lighting for portrait photography. Now, there are two types of light. One is natural light and one is artificial light. Then on the side, you've got something called reflectors. We'll leave that for the moment. Now, natural and artificial light can be used separately or in conjunction with each other to produce varied results. Reflectors can then later on be added into the equation too to enhance or extract a desired feel. Now, light, as you might know, is directional, and lighting is critical and crucial. So directional lighting is the reason why standing in front of a light source that is having what we could call backlighting will make your subject dark. Now, naturally, if I take a particular light and have it behind me, since the light is behind me, it would be lighting up the back of my head. The front of my face will be in darkness. Okay, so lighting is crucial. You have to know, if natural light, where to place your subject, how to make your subject pose, and they should point or face which direction so that they are adequately lit. It need not be just in front. It could be lit on the side also. It could be 3/4 face, etc., etc. It all depends upon what you are trying to portray, what kind of a theme you have in mind. Now, for a fully lit picture, of course, you have a frontal light source, and the sun can be used extremely creatively. But besides that, especially as the sun gets a little harsher, if you have hard shadows on this side, for example, the sun is on this side, you got hard shadows over here, you could just use a reflector to fill this in, and it'll softly fill it in, making those shadows softer. Alternatively, you could also use natural light, something like flash guns. Okay, so let's talk about here about artificial light. Now, you always would not have the luxury of shooting in the sun, especially if you have a photography studio, if you're shooting indoors, there's a particular theme indoors, maybe you've actually constructed a set indoors also, then, well, yes, you will have to shoot indoors and there would have to be a lot of artificial light involved. Now, that particular location could be having lots of windows, and there could also be a lot of, you could say, a lot of natural light seeping in through from the windows. So you could be lucky in that case, then you balance your artificial light along with all that natural light which is surrounded. But if there are no windows, then you would have to just use artificial light, and you need to know how to use your artificial light, how to place them, and how to get the best out of your subject. A lot of people, I would say, are extremely hesitant in using flash because they don't know how to use flash, and flash light, strobe lighting is a completely different subject. You have to learn it. You cannot see it until you actually click it. It's only once you click, you arrange your different strobes on at different angles, on different powers, different intensity. One could be on 100%, another one on 80%, a third one behind you on maybe just 20% as a kicker light, and so on and so forth. So having all of them at different intensities and at different distances from your subject will all give you different results, which is not visible to the naked eye until you actually fire a shot, and then you look in your camera, in your screen and see, and then you'll have to keep adjusting your lighting situations back and forth. So learning artificial light is completely different. It's a different ball game. But don't fight shy of it. Start off with natural light, learn about it. Then you can start using a little bit, you can use reflectors then with natural light. After that, you can pick up some strobes, some flashes, and mix that along with your natural light. So you're going tippy-toeing, dipping your feet in the water, your toes in the water, getting them wet. And once you understand how flashes work a little better, then you could probably go 100% just into artificial light and shoot indoor studio and master that technique too. Once again, there are infinite possibilities when it comes to portraiture photography lighting. You can create a mood using side lighting. You can silhouette your subject. You can use backlighting. There are so many different moods. Experiment, learn and practice. Okay, these are some of the most common ways of setting up photography lighting, especially indoors. Split lighting, loop lighting, Rembrandt lighting, butterfly or clamshell, broad, short and backlighting. Unfortunately, we are restricted by way of time, and this is a whole different subject. It's a vast subject, so I won't get into that. But well, you could probably look this up, Google this up and see what split lighting is. Just to give you, I'll explain just the first one. By split lighting, you will probably end up having a light source from here. If your light source is from this side, this half of my face would be lit up, leaving this half of my face in darkness and shadows. Now that is split lighting. When would you use split lighting? When you probably want to create a particular mood that's crucial for your subject, for the story of the subject also. Let's say, for example, you have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When a person has got a split personality, something like that, okay? That's a typical way, a typical scenario where you would have split lighting. I don't know how many of y'all have seen the series. There was a series by the name of, I can't recollect, of a guy who used to do a lot of murders. He was actually into, okay, when I get it later, I'll get back to it. But anyway, in such cases, when a person, like I mentioned, he's got two personalities, at that time you would end up using split lighting. Rembrandt, I've already mentioned as Rembrandt. Give me a moment, guys. Yeah, as Rembrandt also, I mentioned about the signature triangle over there. Please look up the other types of lighting. I'm moving ahead. This is what an indoor lighting studio could look like, would look. You have strobes inside of these, and the strobes look like they are covered by umbrellas, which are technically called modifiers, because these modifiers come in varied shapes and sizes, and they are placed at different angles. You can see you have lights on top, you have lights on the left, on the right, you have a light at the back of the subject. Lights could be lighting is very, very complex, and you can have several lights. Each light will help give you and get you a different effect. Now, when you're shooting portraits, it's very, very important and crucial to try out different angles. Most portrait photographs are shot by placing the camera at eye level. Now, that is the way you normally would end up. Most people look at their subjects. When you're looking at people, normally they are approximately the same height. So your eye level is at their eye level height. That's how you look at it. And so when you shoot at them at eye level, you probably would get the most pleasing shot of their features, of a human's features. It would look extremely pleasing. By shifting your angle, the effect changes. So once again, mostly people end up shooting at eye level, and the subject's eyes become the focus of the photograph. However, choosing an unconventional angle can really make your portraits stand out. You could shoot from high up, you could shoot from down, from a shallow position, what you call as dog's view or ant view, or etc., etc. And these angles can add a lot of impact, and they can add a lot of variety to your photographs. You can make your subjects look slimmer, thicker, shorter, wider, etc. You could distort them just by changing your lenses. You know, use a wide angle lens and you come close to your subject, and you would be introducing a lot of distortion. And tilting your camera also adds to this distortion. So once again, don't be afraid to try out different angles. Each angle tells a different story and has a different implication. What you want to portray, how you want to portray, you need to know that and go with that. Okay. Now, if you notice over here, this has been shot by me from top down. It's of my daughter, and we had gone river rafting in Kolad. I think this was in probably 2018, maybe about 4 years or 5 years back. 2017 or 2018. Anyway, so once again, it was raining. I have used a fairly fast shutter speed. So if you notice, the raindrops have been virtually frozen over there. Giving a top-down approach, I had to ask her to look up because I wanted to portray as to how she is enjoying the rain falling on her skin, that feeling of openness, of vastness, and the pitter-patter of rain, and you becoming one with nature. So once again, top down, it gives you a completely different feel, a different look. This was when we had gone to Wahiba Sands years back. Of course, most of you all might have gone wadi bashing and things like that, especially sand dune bashing. And you know that when you take your vehicles onto sand, you need to first remove a lot of air from the tires. You need to deflate them. So he was one of the drivers, this Omani gentleman, and he was in the process of deflating our tires. And while he was doing that, I thought, let me just get down and get him in action. So I actually had to stoop down. You can see how low my camera is. I've gone down to his level. I'm literally at the wheel. In fact, I'm slightly below the center of the wheel. And I've shot him. It gives a completely different viewpoint. What I really wanted to do was to capture the other two people underneath the vehicle at the bottom right. That added perspective and contrast to the size of my image on the left and to the right. So once again, guys, it's a different angle. The previous image was from top. This image is from down. And from here, we'll move on to something which is even lower. But this is when my subject was not down. The subject is standing. I'm virtually on ground level shooting. The subject is looking right down at me. He's probably wondering what the hell I'm doing with my camera down. But this was shot at the Muscat Festival a few years back, maybe about, I think probably 4 years or 5 years back. And you have these Omani, there was a big band and they were taking a breather between their sets. And he was one of the drummers over there. And he was, I think he was about to sit down. One of them you can notice is already sitting and with a bottle of water because they had an exhaustive session. This guy was probably just going to sit down and he was just arranging his drums when I managed to get him a nice shot, which I liked. A different angle, tells a different story. Now, using props for effect. Adding props to your photography is a great way to add color, excitement, and impact to the shots. Coming back to this shot, okay, this wasn't thought of as a prop shot, but I got him as an environmental photograph. It's at the Muscat festival. Since it's nighttime, you can see some lights in the background. There's some smoky effect over there. You're seeing the trees over there. That's part of the Muscat festival grounds. And he has got his drums in front, so those drums are actually a prop for that shot. So adding props can add a lot of impact and a lot of excitement besides color to your photography. Moreover, when your model or your subject has got a prop with them, if they are not a professional model, then they start becoming very, very comfortable. With a prop, they know as to exactly where to place their limbs, how to hold it, etc., etc. And their body starts assuming a more relaxed shape, a more relaxed contour. So we use props to A, relax a nervous subject, B, to add ambience to a portrait, to contextualize a subject, to create and strengthen a context, and to also sometimes add humor. So adding a well-used prop will tell a whole different story. Introducing a prop can create a connection to your subject, where they were, what they were doing, and probably at the same time, the subject could also remain a little isolated if you wanted to. Let's see some examples. Now, this is an example of this lady with a book. There are two props over here as the arrows are pointing. One is the spectacles and one is the book. Both of them have been used as props and they were provided to the subject. It adds context and tells a story. This adds a touch of humor. He's a chemist or the alchemist. Is a lot of stuff in front of him. He's probably mixing and matching. I don't know what he's making in the background, making perfumes, but well, it adds a touch of humor. And you can see all the props around him. And they add color. The props add color. They add context to it. And in this case, they also add humor to the subject with his expression. Okay, this is another one. Now, if you look at the chilies that she's holding, this was a planned shot, obviously, and because of that, even the outfit, the dress that she's wearing, blends harmoniously along with her prop. So both of them are complementing each other. If you notice, yeah, they're both complementing each other, and they tell a very, very nice story. So it's important that your prop is properly contextualized, is properly harmonized along with your subject. That's when it comes across and creates a very, very strong impact. Over here, the phone, something as simple as a phone. Everybody is using a phone these days. You always have some prop or the other on you. So when you feel, for example, if your subject is a little uncomfortable facing the camera and looking, you could probably just tell the subject, whoops, sorry. I've skipped, yeah, sorry, here I was. And you could just give your subject the mobile to hold and tell your subject to feel a bit more comfortable. If you notice now, this particular picture, what stands out over here is that the mobile has been used to cover one eye and the other eye is visible through her fingers. Extremely creatively framed, and it tells a nice story. It's a portrait, yet at the same time, a prop used beautifully. Okay, let's see the next one. This is another example. On the left, you can see the umbrella has been used as a prop very, very creatively. And on the right hand side over here, we have tons of negative space, a beautifully artistically framed photograph. The prop is covering half of the subject's face, which adds that small touch and element of mystery to the photograph. And at the same time, you see the prop, you have that element of mystery. On the right, you have negative space, and the subject itself is in a tiny, narrow vertical bandwidth. But all focus is drawn over there. Beautifully framed photograph. Please know, please understand how your props can be used, how your subjects can be framed, how they can complement each other, how they amalgamate together to form one cohesive story. Here's another, like a Halloween pumpkin or something used along with this baby in the background as a prop. tells another story, adds a dash of color. And of course, the kid winking with one eye adds a touch of humor and a nice feel to this image. Now, this is a maternity shot. In this maternity shot, if you notice, the small child, the child on the left, has been used as a prop where the arrow is pointing. She is probably either the first child of this lady or maybe somebody else's kid, but she's been dressed appropriately to blend as if she is the child, the elder child of this lady. It's a maternity shot, so the elder child has kept her hand, her palm on the belly, on the womb, over the womb of the mother who's about to conceive, and that acts as a leading line. All eyes straight away go on the womb, on the mother's stomach. So please remember, your props need not only be inanimate objects. You can even have a human being as a prop. It can be used very, very creatively. It can be used very powerfully. Now, breaking the rules of portrait photography. Understanding the rules and practicing them can be a precursor to getting good creative photographs. But when you break the rules, when you think outside the box, you can create highly unusual and unique photographs that would probably stamp you as your brand when you are shooting portraits. I can't recollect the name of the photographer, but there was one particularly famous photographer who was specializing in headshots of very, very influential people like prime ministers, generals, and things like that. And what he used was a wide angle lens, and he would go up close and he would shoot from down. When you shoot your subject from down, it makes your subject look very imposing and creates so you're using a wide angle lens which is slightly distorting, okay, your subject. You're shooting from a lower angle that creates a very, very imposing figure of your subject. So it would really work very well when you're shooting powerful subjects like prime ministers, presidents, general, and people who are basically of a powerful stature. The same thing when you're shooting, for example, a woman who's pregnant, maybe during a paternity shot, from down would generally not look very, very flattering, as it would accentuate the womb, the belly. So of course, if you've chosen a good angle, you might just be able to get it to work. But be careful. So again, breaking the rules of photography, breaking the rules of composition is all good. But you first start off by knowing the rules, practicing with them, then start thinking outside the box and breaking the rules of photography, breaking the rules of composition, to carve your own niche and to find something of your own, make your own path. One more thing over here, shooting black and white portrait photography can create a very, very intimate portrait shot. Why? Because color is another element, and you have taken that away from the equation. So now it's just lights and darks that your entire subject is composed of. Nothing else, nothing distracting. So do remember this. Don't forget to experiment and shoot with, or maybe convert, even if you're shooting in color, to convert later in monochrome and black and white and see how it looks. Shooting a series of portrait shots. I actually wanted to add some examples over here, but I forgot about it in hindsight. Maybe I'll see if I can locate something later. A few minutes later after my presentation, I'll show you why you should shoot a series of portrait shots. Now, if you are talking to your subject, let's say a subject is feeling uncomfortable and somehow you aren't able to get that right photograph of your subject, the right expression which you want. It's all looking too posed or unnatural. You're not able to just cut it. It just doesn't cut. So in such a case, you could probably just chat with your subject, crack jokes with them, talk about certain things, and maybe while they're trying to pose, they suddenly start speaking. And while they're speaking, you keep clicking them. Of course, you have to use a high shutter speed to ensure that your pictures are sharp. But because they are sitting, they are chatting, now suddenly they are not all that, they're they're more relaxed basically, and they won't be that rigid, and you'll be able to get much better images from them. Also, please remember that a series of movement of shots can create a certain amount of drama, depends upon how you want to portray it, and you get some better expressions. So do remember this. Shoot a series of portrait shots. Once you've taken your standard ones, ask them to loosen up a bit, chat with them, talk with them, get a few extra shots, and you never know what you might end up with. You probably might end up finding that your candid shots are better than your posed ones. Be ready to get surprised. Okay. Editing and post processing. I cannot stress this enough. Excuse me. Okay. First and foremost, shoot in RAW. I already mentioned this at the very outset. I cannot emphasize this enough. You have to shoot raw because a raw image gives you the most latitude when you're post processing. If you all do not know what raw is, don't worry about it. You can read about it, or we'll have another session later where raw images are explained and what's the difference between a raw image and a JPEG image. For the moment, just remember, if your camera supports raw, always shoot in raw. Okay. Now, you can read all this. Another thing I want to tell you is during post processing, when you are cropping images, remember one of the most important rules: never ever crop at joints. For examples, you never crop at the elbow, you never crop at the shoulder, you never crop at the knee, you never crop at the ankles. It looks very, very unnatural. So instead of cropping at the ankles or at the knee, you could probably crop it midway around the shin. That's between the ankle and the knee. You never crop exactly at the waist. That's another joint. So slightly above the waist or maybe below. See what looks good. Remember, avoid cropping at joints. Okay. And of course, avoid cutting off fingers, shoes, or hair from the image. This also does not tend to look good. Now I'll show you. You can read this, freeze this later during maybe when you're watching it again, and you can read this entire slide in its entirety. But right now, excuse me. Yeah. But right now, I'll tell you and explain to you as to why shooting raw is so important. I'll give you some examples. Let's go to the next one. Okay. Now, this is a shot of my friend Shaheen. And he is swimming in a pool. And this was one of the images that I had submitted, I think, in the Nikon movement competition. And yes, this was among my 3 images which were shortlisted in the top 30. Yeah, came in the top 30, out of which one later came in the top 10. But bottom line is that this was all 3 of my images came in the top 30. Now, this was one of them. This has been shot using a series of 5 flashes. In fact, if you look at the reflection down on the bottom left, you see 2 there. On the right, you see 2, and there's a kicker light behind him, which separates him and gives this lighting at the back over his shoulders and his trapezius and his scalp. And it separates him from the background, basically. We have a backlight there. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention that this gentleman, Shaheen, and another friend of mine going by the name of Krishna Kumar, KK, as many of you all might know him, 3 of us got together and we conceptualized and shot for this Nikon competition. And all 3 of us helped each other, spurred each other to reach greater heights, and we all came up with stunning shots. So it really would be remiss of me not to mention both of them. A big thank you to both of those guys if they're ever seeing this video or whatever. You're always remembered, you're always appreciated and loved. Okay, now, so this is my basic image. Now, after processing and cropping, remember that this was about movement. We're trying to show some movement. The splashing of water, and this person, he's probably just emerged. He's probably doing something like a butterfly stroke over here. See what happens after it's processed. This is what we come up with. This image is so much more powerful. You can see the droplets of water, how some of the droplets of water are frozen mid-air. You can see the water coming out of his mouth, spurting out of his mouth and dropping off his shoulders and his chest and down his face also. So post-processing, guys, is extremely important. Shooting raw, being able to extract from your images is very, very crucial. Remember how to crop your images and learn how to process your images properly. I cannot emphasize that enough. Next image. Now this has been shot with a small GoPro camera, and that too with a GoPro 5. This was shot in 2018, somewhere in the month of April 2018. Okay. And this is my daughter with a couple of her friends. This was in a glade somewhere in the interior, and it was one of those farms where a lot of vegetables and fruits were being grown. We found a small glade in between with a small pool. They sat down, and of course, since I'm standing in the glade and they're facing the glade, they are not lit up. But because this GoPro, from GoPro 5 onwards, I think they started supporting raw images, or maybe 4, whatever. I used the raw image and I was able to process it. And this is what I finally came up with. So you can see the amount of detail, the amount of information that is available in a raw picture, which you can extract out of a file if you've got the right post-processing tools and skills. Let me flip back to the previous picture again. This is the previous one. And let's go back. This is the processed image. Okay. So once again, raw is important. Let's go and see another example. This is another one. Once again with the GoPro. This is on Finn's Beach or Pebbles Beach. And this was shot when the sun is very harsh. You can see it's probably somewhere around maybe 11:30 in the morning or maybe 12:30 in the afternoon, 1 o'clock. If you look at the shadow over here, you know, it's just short of being overhead. The sun was extremely harsh and there was no action in the sky, unfortunately no clouds. So anyway, this was shot in raw. I was able to process it and I was able to extract a lot of stuff. So from here we went to this image. Okay. Now, yes, the sky was rather drab on that particular day. So I picked up another sky, performed a sky replacement, and well, but the rest of the image is absolutely from there. And you can see, let me flip back and you can see the original image. This is the original image, how bland it is. And once it's been processed, you can see as to how it reaches an altogether completely different level. So guys, once again, I cannot stress enough, always shoot in raw. Right. Okay, this brings us to the last slide. And now I would like to walk you through some of my images. I finished the basic thing about portrait photography. I'll just walk you through a few of my images. Okay. Now this was an Aryan lady which I shot in Ladakh 2015. This again was one which came in the top 10 for Nikon Middle East and Africa. And it's one of my favorite images. I've used a shallow depth of field to throw the leaves at the background. If you see the top right, these are leaves over there. She was sitting in a glade, thrown them out of focus. Also notice, please, her eyes have been brought out. If you have a look at her eyes, a lot of post-processing has been performed. So to really extract the best from your image, you need to know about post-processing besides shooting in RAW. They complement each other. This again is a small boy. He's an Aryan boy in a village in Ladakh. He was standing next to a door and I liked the light coming in soft. I liked his expression, young, innocent, and of course, I clicked it. After that, we have this lady. This was shot at the Hormuz. I had an event over there where I was photographing a particular event. Yes, I was the photographer for that event. And after we finished the event, it was dinner time and she was having a drink. I clicked this shot of hers and you can see she's having a special cocktail. And because of the ice used over there, all those fumes are coming out and they all added and gave a different look to the image, a different feel to the image. This one again is of an Aryan kid in Ladakh. You can see the emotions in the child's eyes. She's covered her lips, she's covered half her face, but her eyes speak volumes. Also notice that because the window is not in the same plane, how part of it has been blurred out, and so is the bottom part of the window frame. So remember, use your depth of field, use your aperture, use your lenses very, very creatively to complement your frame. This, of course, you all have seen, so I won't discuss that again. This is Ladakh. This, of course, you two have seen. I won't expand on it. Now, this was shot, I think, on the way to Wadi Arbaeen, if I mistake not. We stopped on the way, and there was this Omani kid on a cycle. He was on the road. And while he was moving up and down on the gravel, on the pebbles, I managed to get a shot of him. And this, of course, I would term as an environmental portrait. He's shown in conjunction to his background, his environment. And you can see that the mountains are crisp and clear. But of course, if you want to, I could have used a shallow depth of field. But I felt that having him with the background in focus adds better context. It contextualizes it much better and adds more impact. So, young Omani boy on the cycle, enjoying himself in the early hours of the morning. Over here, this is another friend of mine. This was for the Nikon movement competition. And this again came in the top 30 or top 10, whatever it was. And if you notice, it's a friend of mine. His name is Gerald. And he's a very, very good cyclist. He's also a good photographer and a graphic artist. And we had gone in the morning for a shoot. And of course, I've used some flashes also for this. So if you notice, the sun, of course, is at his left, but it's more behind. But because of the flashes and left and the right-hand side, 2 flashes were used as fill-in also. Notice also that because movement was the theme, I have been able to use a shutter speed where I was able to get the wheels blurred. And it adds motion to the image. When you're shooting a subject like this, he is, of course, doing a wheelie over here. That grit and determination on his face, the level of difficulty is very, very important. And all that adds to his image. So the expression of the subject tells a different story altogether. Now, this was shot atop Matra Fort. I think, again, maybe somewhere around probably 3 years back. And we have 2 Odissi dancers. And they're on top of Matra Fort. It was late in the evening, probably close to sunset. As you can notice, the shadow over here, it's almost on level. So I would deduce the sun is coming from this side. And the sun is approximately at the 9 o'clock position. The sun is casting a lovely hue on them. They are bathed in that lovely warm evening glow, which also comes on this side of the wall. And you have the sun casting a shadow of one of the dancers here. It all adds to the image. And of course, a Mathura Fort, scenic and beautiful, rustic as it is. The rustic scene of the setting combined with the ethnicity of the dancers and their costumes and their pose. I think it all blends together beautifully. One of my favorite images. And I would like to thank both these young ladies. They are Deepam Odissi Dancing Group. You can look them up on Instagram. Thank you for posing me and allowing me to click this beautiful image of yours. God bless you all. This was at Muscat Festival. A random shot of a man, again an environmental portrait. It shows a man along with his animal, and their relationship establishes that and what he does for a living. Over here, you've already seen this image, so I need not expand on it further. This is another favorite image of mine. This was shot at Wakan village, maybe some 6 years back, 6 or probably 7 years back. Over here, I've used a wide angle lens, my 16-35, as I had gone primarily for shooting landscapes at Wakan village. And I suddenly saw this gentleman, this old gentleman in front of me. And such a sweet guy. Of course, you see his features. They're very soft, they're very sweet. And he's as sweet. He's far sweeter and soft-spoken in person than he comes across in this image. And when I requested him for a quick pose, he just stood there. And while he was looking at something else, I switched from 16 to 35 mm and I got this shot. So I went over there and gave the picture to his family later, but unfortunately, he's shifted from Wakan village. I think he's come to some other place in the city, but I'm sure his family have handed it over to him. Next, we have this image of a person making parathas. This was shot at Passage to India years back, once again for the Nikon movement competition. Came in the top 30 or the top 10, can't recollect. So you show he's tossed this paratha up, this tandoori in motion, And while it's twirling around, I have clicked the image. It tells a story, and well, always choose your aperture, your shutter speed, everything properly, because ultimately it boils down to a particular story that you want. So this is the last of this particular image, which I wanted you to see. A few random images that I will touch on. I just need about 6-7 minutes more before I complete. This again is shot at the Muscat Festival. I've shot from really low below. This was shot at the Royal Opera House during National Day celebrations. It was lit up. I asked this couple to stand in front and pose. I'm generally not one for shooting plain architecture. I love having human elements in my images. But of course, they're not professional posers, with all due respect to them. And body language was not good. The outfit was not all that good. So there was another couple which I met over here on this day, and I requested them to come wearing something different. I told them as to what to wear, and I showed them as to how to pose. And that's this image over here, which I shot the next day. I think it was either their birthday or their wedding anniversary. So I asked them to dress appropriately. I got them to face each other, which gave a more romantic and intimate feeling. The lighting, the soft, warm hues contributed to this. And well, I felt we've got something like Omani architecture in the back. We've got Indians in front posing. And well, there's so much of heritage over here. This was shot at the Spartan race. These guys had finished. Lighting has been very, very harsh, but random shot. Just showing you all so you all get different ideas as to how to shoot your portraits under different scenarios. This again was at the Spartan race. Friend of mine, going by the name of Janathan, he jumped over this really fit guy, and while he crossed this hurdle, I was able to freeze him. I used a high shutter speed, one of those images. This was of my daughter in Armenia, 2018. We had gone to a church, and while she was lighting candles, I loved the soft hues and the glow of the light on her face. You can see the pillars of the church behind. It was dark, and during processing, of course, it darkened even further, and they are slightly out of focus also. But the lighting, the softness all contributes to this image. One of my special images of hers. Now this is a group shot, something which I haven't touched on. Part of portrait photography is also group shots. So this was a professional shoot which I had done for a company, can't recollect the name. The setting was at Bar Al Jissa. I asked the hotel authorities for a ladder. I climbed atop a ladder, got this good frame, and I asked everyone to pose because I wanted people right from the front to the back to be visible. Let me zoom in a bit so y'all can have a look, and let me zoom out. So this is how you frame. You use the leading lines on the floor, the leading lines of the buildings on the top, left and the right, to harmonize, to frame your subject from both sides. And well, you get a nice angle that's pleasing, that's flattering to all your subjects. Notice that though because I've used a very wide lens, if you look at this gentleman on the right, his shoulder over here, there's slight distortion. His shoulder's a little stretched out. It would be, I could have probably corrected that somehow in post by pushing it in, but then that would create a problem with these verticals of the window. You see a similar problem on the left-hand side edge. His left shoulder is a little stretched out over here. There's a little distortion. But luckily, because I centered my subjects and I left adequate room on the left and right corner of my frame, the distortion has been minimized, and most people, unless I pointed it out, would really not have noticed this. This was shot at the Muscat Festival. Bang outside, before you enter the festival, these people, they get off their vans and they dress themselves up and they stand in a group. While they were setting themselves up, I took a group shot. So there's fairly decent lighting over here. And I've used both, on the left-hand side, the gun, the rifle, and on the right-hand side, the instruments as props and sort of to frame the subjects and to add some more context to it. Another example of a group shot. This is, well, you have an animal as a subject, use a fast shutter speed, and you're able to freeze the motion. The water droplets are frozen. Period. That's about it. Over here, once again, experimenting with angles. We are on top of, I think this is close to Amirat Heights, Al Amirat Heights. We were going there for a session. It's my daughter in front and two friends, Abu in the center and Sunaina at the back. And experimenting, I shot them from down. So when you shoot from down, remember, it creates a more imposing angle. My daughter isn't so tall, so she ends up looking a little taller. Look at the imposing. Look at Abu over here and look at her. She's the tallest. She's very tall. So remember, the angle that you're shooting, the lens, the focal length at which you're shooting, the aperture at which you're shooting, all contribute and tell a different story. That's it for this particular set of images. And last, for people who have only mobile phones and only have, they are feeling restricted because they feel that they are restricted by their equipment. So this small session of about 3-4 minutes is for them, and then I'm through. Give me a moment, guys. Excuse me. Okay. Right. Let's go to this one. Now, once again, let me reiterate, all these images are shot only with a mobile phone. Now, this was shot in Mumbai in Metro Inox Theatre, and it was using, this was I think somewhere in 2017. I had my Huawei Mate 9. It's very old today. But understand, this is only indoor lighting. There's no external lighting over here. And yet, if I go into, I zoom in over here, have a look at the clarity. Look at the light on her face. Look at the light behind. Look at the poster on the left. How well exposed it is. How beautiful it is. Guys, today cell phones have come a very, very long way. So please use them. Don't feel restricted just because you have a cell phone. Next image. The same lady, she wanted a shot for using for one of her brochures. So I was on the way, in fact, coming to the airport and stopped by the seaside. I took the shot a little down. I used the skyline as, well, I threw it out of focus using a shallow aperture, and I wanted her face and her body, her shoulders against a clean background. So I used the sky as a clean background. Again, because it's blurred, I used a little shallow aperture. Even the clouds are thrown out of focus. You can see some gradations of the clouds, but you really cannot see the clouds themselves. And then I cropped in a little bit over here. So you can crop in as you feel. Another image is this of a lady in a restaurant in Al Khair. I think this restaurant is closed down right now. She wanted a shot, a picture of hers taken. So used my mobile phone. This was in 2019, somewhere around November. This is with my Huawei P30 Pro. And I went into portrait mode over there. And using the portrait mode, I threw the restaurant slightly out of focus. Not too much, mind you. I didn't want it completely out of focus. I wanted people to be able to know and realize that, yes, it is a restaurant. The seating over there, the background, it all is a restaurant. So there is some context to it when she's standing over there and posing that she is in a restaurant. Okay. Now, this is nothing much as a photo. It was just at a friend's place, and I like the light coming in from the back, from the window. It was somewhere around 5:15, 5:30 in the evening. Created a golden hue on her hair. If you spot good light, you can just whip out your camera, your phone, I mean, and just click away. This, of course, is a picture of yours truly. This was shot again at Wakan village with by another photographer friend of mine, using, again, my Huawei P30 Pro. Again in portrait mode. Please see as to how the foliage at the back has been thrown out of focus. This again is at Wakan village. Friend of mine, another photography buddy, name is Sunil. And I like the lines of light filtering from the roof from top left. I use them as leading lines on the door to point towards him. And then I used another crop which goes like this. So you could use any crop that you like. If I zoom in over here, you'll probably see me in his glasses, a reflection. It's at higher, lower resolution, so it's not really visible. Anyway, bottom line is you can see, nobody really could tell, unless if I did not tell you that this was shot with a mobile phone, it would be extremely hard to know about that. Again, also notice over here, the wall on his right is in the same plane, so that's in focus. But if you look at the door at the back, the door and the design, the work on the door at the back is a little diffused. This wall at the back, again, is a little diffused. It's a little shallow depth of field. Again, all can be done with your phone using portrait mode. Next, this is of my neighbor in their living room. They wanted a picture of theirs. I shot it. Now there was terrible backlighting over here, so I had to overexpose the image. Again, I shot in portrait mode, sending the background into, well, I blurred it out. So that's how you lay emphasis on your subject. Guys, it's a mobile phone once again. Now, this is of another friend of mine at her place. Her name is Rashmi, and again, I used my same Huawei P30 Pro, again in portrait mode. Later on, I cropped this image to come up with something like this. It was cropped and a little bit post-processing slightly. Notice how there's a context that she is at home. She's in a living room. We can see the split AC behind. We can see a frame on the left-hand side, and you can see a chair behind her. But they're thrown out of focus. So your entire attention, your entire focus is only on the subject. But at the same time, it's contextualized. You know where she is. Over here, same lady. Again, she's sitting at somebody else's house. The background thrown out of focus. Another friend of mine, Tulika, at her house, similar seat, but background thrown out of focus. Guys, there's no limit as to what you can do with just a mobile phone, really. This is, of course, shot in their house. Once again, a group shot, but with a mobile phone. I'm showing you different examples how you can shoot different images with your mobile phone. Your portraiture need not be restricted in their house with a mobile phone. This again, this is at Cornish. Once again with a mobile phone. So this is early morning, fisherman, and this is a crop actually. This is a wider shot. As he came up, I clicked him. This again is of my friend Sunil. We had gone to Sultan Qaboos Masjid in the morning, and just lounging around there, enjoying having a nice time over there. And well, I shot him with my phone, framed him in between the arch, and I got him. And if you see, have a look, it's pretty clear, it's pretty sharp. There's a lot of detail in his beard. And well, it's a mobile phone, guys. Who would say? This was during Shaheen, the cyclone which just came to Oman. This was one day before when we had a lot of activity at Cornish and the waves were humongous. Another one similar. Just showing you what you can do with your mobile phone. So much that can be done. Now, this was shot somewhere around 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning, I would say. Yeah, 12:31 a.m. This is of the Muscat municipality building at Darset with my mobile phone again. Guys, please do understand this is not portrait photography, this particular shot. I'm just showing you what your mobile phone can do, the power of it. Look at the detail that's captured in the foreground over here and the trees too. This again is a friend of mine, Nagraj. We had gone to Kuryat. This is opposite the Kuryat fort. There's this small door. I liked it and asked him to sit down over there. And we clicked a pic. So, guys, mobile phone once again. Another friend, KK Krishna Kumar, I spoke to you about. Similar setting over there opposite Kuryat fort. Guys, it's a mobile phone once again. There really is no limit. If you want to see the amount of detail that's there, have a look at the detail that's there. Look at the eyes, look at the beard. And because I'm in portrait mode, I was able to throw the background, the door over here, a little out of focus. But notice Columbia, the name over here on his t-shirt, tack sharp. Look at the time on his Apple Watch, that's tack sharp. Look at the key over here on his waist, that is also tack sharp. There's lots that can be done, guys, with a mobile phone. This is a snap of yours truly at the Hormuz during Christmas. Again, what can be done with a mobile phone? Have a look, guys. Look at the colors. See the depth of what can be captured with your mobile phone. Need I say more? Those of you all with a mobile phone, please do not feel restricted. We are coming to the end of it. I was the official DJ at the Legends League cricket tournament, which was held from the 19th to the 29th of Jan. And I wanted a picture of mine. So I requested somebody to just click. I asked him to stand. I clicked an image and I told him, point me somewhat like this. And this is how he framed me. Well, I wasn't too happy with the framing, but of course, not everybody's a photographer. So I had to do make do with whatever best I had. I came back, I cropped the image, post processed it, and this is what I finally came up with. So, guys, once again, it's a mobile phone. Yes, I have replaced the sky over, the sky is changed. I'll flip back to the previous image. Besides the sky, rest everything else is identical. But look at my face, look at the grass color, look at the bottom when you have this house at over there. Have a look at all those details and how they have come to life. So post-processing, shooting in RAW makes a difference, guys. This is the last of my images. And with this, I'd like to bid adieu. Thank you so much, folks. I'm stopping my screen sharing. It's been a pleasure having you all with me. Thank you for, I think slightly thoda time thoda zyada ho gaya, but well, that's it. Guys, Yogesh ji, whoever it is, please take over from here.
Thank you, Prakash ji. I think so. Whoever attended today is absolutely had a delight. Must have been delighted to see you. It's a question answer session, and we welcome questions. Maybe you can ask yourself, but request everybody to make it crisp. And yes, the session is open for all the participants who attended today. Please unmute yourself before you ask question, because I guess most of you must be muted.
Can I start with my question? Is it okay, Yogesh?
Yes, yes, sure, sure.
Okay, Prakash ji, thank you. It was a wonderful session. And when Yogesh introduced you as and as an engineer, a photographer, a musician, I thought what all activities you do. But now at the end of the session, I have the answer. You are a photographer, wonderful photographer.
Thank you, ji.
So I loved it. All these high pleasing photographs. Thank you so much. I have a question. Which processing software do you use?
Okay. Anmolji, thank you so much for your kind words. To get down to answering your question, I use Lightroom and I use Photoshop. These are my two tools primarily. I do most of my processing in Lightroom, but there are certain things which Lightroom really cannot do and which Photoshop is more equipped to handle. Excuse me, which Photoshop is more equipped to handle. So from Lightroom, I then take it over to Photoshop. But it would be safe to say I do 90% of my processing in Lightroom and 10% in Photoshop.
Sure, got it. Yogesh, with your permission, can I ask one more question? I'm not sure.
Okay, no, she's open for it.
What's your plan? But can we have, this is all theory, but can we have practical sessions with Prakash and if Prakash is okay? Of course, summer has set in.
Yeah, I will answer to this. We do have light up some photo walks, but not immediately. Maybe post October we'll be doing that. We have our plan in place. Reason being, it's too hot now and it's too harsh now.
Yeah.
So it
Yep.
actually currency may not be very feasible. On individual capacity, Prakash is going somewhere. Maybe you can tag along with him and try it out, but not per se as a group as of now. Ashish, can you unmute yourself? Ashish, both Ashish Subedar as well as Ashish Chavan and Manjunath sir, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes, your take, Ashish Chavan from India. Your take today. Something you would like to add? Something for benefit of
Yes,
everybody.
yes. First of all, it was a treat to see this total session and moreover to listen also. I was like mesmerized and like I was thinking like this is like 4M photography radio station is going on, something like that. Audio and video, both the things were like excellent at par. First of all, thank you Prakash ji for giving such a wonderful treat. Coming down to photographs, I'm very much astonished to see some of the best photographs, especially the lady who was holding a mobile and whole the background is white. Then a person from Vakan, a senior citizen person from Vakan. Then one more photograph of your daughters from Romania, I think. Romania or something, some different place. The church was a little bit lit from the background. So these are the different types of photographs and portrait photography. Basically, I liked it very much, very much. And even today, most of us would have got knowledge about these kind of photography. It's not a people photography. People photography is different than these kind of portrait photography. So I would like to say thanks to Prakash ji for rendering us, giving us so much knowledge on this kind of topic. Thank you very much. Lovely session. I would like to see once again full session. I would like to see.
Yeah, we have
later on. Yeah,
We
recorded.
have recorded. Yeah.
Sure.
Manjunath sir,
And
if you
one
would like
more thing I would like to add. One more thing, like I had watched all this senior cricket league, cricket match, but I was not aware I would be meeting a person who is official DJ over there. So it would not be saying that engineers can do wonders. Even I'm also mechanical engineer by education. So everywhere engineers can do the wonders. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Manjunath sir, your take.
Thank you, Prakash. It was excellent. A very nice collection that you picked up from your archives. And it was very nice, explained in detail, a lot of hand-holding, rebrushed again the fundamentals. Thank you. And thank you, Yogesh, for bringing this together. Thanks a lot.
Sir.
Thanks a lot, both of
you. Prakash ji, just to brief you, everybody loves to shoot their families and their kids and whenever they go to park. I guess from my side, if I have to tell you today is using a mobile, what we can do is what we learn today. Not all the time you can carry your DSLRs to the different places.
True.
And I guess the last session of what you did with the mobile photography actually has helped us a lot. We can actually do a lot of things.
Thank you so much, Yogesh ji. Thank you so much, Ashish ji, for your kind words, and thank you, Manjunath dear, for your kind words. Manjunath and I we've been buddies. We've been shooting together. Also gone out on several shoots together, and he's also a very experienced photographer. So it's really nice having all you guys, Ashish ji, also on board. And yes, as you mentioned, Yogesh ji, as the thing is that everybody does not have expensive equipment, but everybody does have a mobile phone. And I really had kept a separate folder of images only shot via mobile, just to show you all that you can get really good images. I am not denying that there is not going to be a quality difference between DSLR or mirrorless versus phones, but you can get very, very good quality. If the lighting is good, if your angles are good, and if your processing is good, you can come up with something really amazing just with your phones. So people don't have any excuses. You can start off from right tonight itself. Your phone is with you, whip it out and get going. Happy clicking.
Yeah. Can I request everybody to switch on their cameras like before, I want to take one screenshot. Can I request everybody to switch on them? Yes. That is a nice one so that I can take the photograph. Yes, I think so. I have covered, yes, most of it. The forum is open. Sanjay, if you would like to say something. Sanjay is our convener and he's one man behind this forum run by Pratimanche. Sanjay, you are muted. You unmute karo.
Thank you, Yogesh. And Prakash ji, it was a wonderful session. Very knowledgeable and very informative. And I would like to have one more clarity also from, you can put it as a question also. That lot of Zoom sessions and lot of YouTube channels individuals are creating nowadays. So the lighting session, what you showed for the photography, can we have something similar in this video photography also? The lighting is very important. So if you can throw just a few lines on that, your experience, how to put up the light session and during the YouTube photography or YouTube video recording, if you can suggest us.
Sanjay ji, thank you so much for your kind words. I'd like to mention first and foremost that you've brought up a very, very important point. It's so crucial. Most people do not realize that the world, especially in the past 2 years during Corona times, has gone more online, more digital. And if you are online, there are two factors which define you, your presence over there. One is audio and the other is video. It's because of audio that I'm holding this microphone in my hand. For me,
Okay.
I mean, being a DJ or whatever it is, sound is crucial. I have to have crystal clear sound going. So I'm holding my microphone inside, it's running through a mixer and it's coming in through my laptop. So I'm hoping and presuming that the sound that's coming through is crystal clear.
Yes.
Okay, now next, I've got my roof lights on over here. I'm in my living room. I've got my roof lights on, and they're basically warm white. Okay. At the same time, on my left, I have got one small light. On my right, I have got another
One.
small light. Okay.
Okay.
So they are lighting
Okay.
me from the left and right. So I am covered. I'll give you a small example over here by holding a piece of paper. This piece of paper is in my hand. I'm going to cover the light to my left, which you'll probably be seeing on my right. Okay. I'm going to cover it. Keep looking at my face as I lift it. Can you see my face? Half shadow,
Yes.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's moved out. I'm back in shadow and now I'm back there. So
Right.
the overhead light is coming there, but I'm getting a fill. I'm getting a fill from this side. At the same time, I've used another fill light from my right hand side. And as I
Okay.
cover it, on the right hand side, you can see my face goes into darkness.
Right.
Okay. Now this is a much bigger light and this one is a much smaller light. Okay. I've adjusted the intensity of both of them to just complement each other and to work harmoniously with the overhead light. I just basically didn't want any harsh shadows on my face and I just wanted my face
Right.
to be visible. So I think you don't need a separate session for this. A small left light, a full right light. There are many people, let me tell you. Okay, by the way, these are both ring lights. Okay. You get
Okay.
them for
Okay.
about 8 or 10 reals, 15 reals, 16 reals, depending on the size. You can get them from anywhere. Now, the reason why I have not used a frontal one behind my laptop is because I wear glasses. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
If I have that, you will see the reflection of those lights in my glasses. So I have to use side lighting. Manjunath, just stay where you are. Stop, stop,
Yes.
stop. Manjunath, just lift your head a millimeter up. Ah, that's it. Now have a look at Manjunath's eyes. Can you see the light in his eyes?
Yes.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about. Imagine a light in front of my laptop. You'll probably be seeing two circles over here. And it would look ghastly. It will look very bad.
Right.
Okay. Another thing. I'm getting old. I've forgotten what I wanted to say. Okay. Yeah. Two ring lights over here. Another thing what you could do is if I have ring lights over there, you'll see a lot of people using ring lights even if they're not wearing glasses. If you look at their pupils, you will see a ring light inside their pupils. And frankly, that looks rather, either you would say robotic to me, or I would say ghoulish, Ghoulish, for lack of a better word, ghoulish to me. So I prefer, well, having some overhead lights, which is out of my frame. Of course, if I look up, you will end up seeing the overhead lights now. My
Yes.
overhead lights come in my glasses, but I'm looking down and I have a light to the left and a light to the right. And I'll give you a small trick for those of y'all I've kept my laptop. I've got two laptops on over here. I've kept my laptop on the dimmest possible level. Because if I just increase the intensity of my laptop screen, keep looking at my eyes, my glasses, as my screen gets brighter, you will start seeing a reflection in my glasses.
Yes.
See what's happened to my
We
eyes.
can see it.
So it's
Yeah.
extremely uncomfortable for me to deliver my
Yes.
lecture
Yes.
and my workshop with a very dim screen, but over a period of 5-10 minutes, my eyes slowly got accustomed to it and I'm operating on a very dim screen over here. But then you have my glasses clean, absolutely clean. There's zero reflection over here. And trust me, let me tell you, whatever I've told you in these 3-4 minutes has taken me more than 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I don't know how many hours of figuring this out. Trust me, it's taken me a long time, especially the laptop, the lights coming inside. Oof, it was crazy. I hope that's answered your question and you don't need a separate
Yes.
session, Sanjay ji.
Perfectly. Yes. Right. Right. I understand. Yes. I understand. It was a very informative one. Thank you. Thank you so much.
ठीक है, और
Thank you,
क्या?
Prakash ji. Any more? GK? GK, you are muted, yeah?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I was listening to all. I think Vinu has answered my question.
Yogesh, can I ask one question?
Sure, Swati, yeah.
Yeah, you just explain about this ring lights while shooting. If we want to shoot yourself only, Can we keep that ring light in front of you and shoot with your mobile? Is it advisable? So the light will throw on your face.
Hi, Swati. If I mistake not, we're friends on Facebook, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, okay. Swati ji, I'll tell you, I think I just answered this question. If I had kept the ring light in front over there, it would reflect in my glasses. Point number one. Now, you don't wear glasses, so you could get away with it. If you're at this distance, roughly where I am to the frame or where you are in the frame, you could probably get away with it. But if you look closely, you'll end up seeing those ring lights, a reflection of it in your pupils. Now, whether that's acceptable to you or not is up to you. Understand, it's coming straight. So if it's coming straight from head on, it is going to be reflected in your pupils. Whether it's visible or not depends on what size screen you're seeing. If you're seeing on a small mobile screen, shayad dikhe nahi. I'm using a 17-inch laptop over here, so things are visible to me, and I'm a little finicky, to be very honest here. I'm a little finicky. Thoda OCD ka problem hai. So I would definitely prefer, see, these lights don't cost much. Now I'm sitting on my dining table. I've got a chair on this side. I've got a chair on this side. The big ring light is on its own stand. Wait, let me switch to, you can see my hands. Let me switch my cameras so you can see more of my hand movements. Yeah. So this ring light, whoops, this ring light on this side is on a stand of its own. Okay.
Okay.
1 second. Yeah, this ring light on this side is on a stand of its own. So you can raise or lower it or bring it in front or back as you wish. This other one is much smaller. The ring light circumference is around so much. That's all. Okay, that is 10 inches or 12 inches. I think it's 10 inches. This one is, let's not even talk about it. It's this small, my palm. And it's got a clip at the bottom. So I've clipped it to the top of my chair. This is my chair. It won't be visible because I've blurred my background, but you understand. Imagine you're sitting on your dining table chair and I've just clipped it on top of that and I've pointed it towards me. So you can use something like this. It comes for almost nothing. I would always suggest a left and right setup along with an overhead light. And the left and right setup, don't keep it absolutely flush with your face. Keep it at a 45-degree angle. So it's coming sort of, if you can see me, it's coming this way,
Right,
not this way. Okay, I'll switch cameras again and go a bit back so you're visible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it be this way from front.
Hmm.
This way from front. Let it not be near my head, because if it's near my head, you'll get shadows from both sides, cancelling out each other. That's about it basically. It's hardly anything. If in Omani riyals, let me tell you, this small ring light over here cost me something like about 6 riyals, and that one cost me 15 or 17 riyals. That's about it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
So in about 22 bucks, you'll be set up for a good session.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope, Swati, you get the answer for your questions. Anybody further has anything?
Prakashji, I have one question. It's about the color of clothes and type of clothes for portrait photography. So I have seen some of the family photographs, all entire family of 4 wearing white shirts. Though sometimes it looks good, but I feel it look like instead of same color, complementary colors would be better. So can you just spend a few minutes on how to choose color based on the background or theme or family photograph? Should it be same, like all wearing blue or blue red combination or shades of blue, like that?
Hi Ashish, how are you? I think we'd gone together shooting once, right?
Yeah, Bandaral Kairan.
Right. Okay. So Ashish, now when you're talking about a group shot, if you're having a theme and you'd like to color code it, for example, maybe it's a wedding theme, it's an engagement theme, it's an anniversary theme, it's a birthday theme. If they are having a theme and they are color coded, okay, then you go with that. There's no problem at all. Otherwise, you don't necessarily have to have them color coded. But when they are in your frame, they should be able to gel with each other. They should flow harmoniously. One person may not be well clad, another person may be formally dressed. You don't know. You'll have to position them in your frame accordingly so that the impact of them not being harmoniously dressed is minimized. Okay, that is important. Having said that, if you have the option of choosing your colors with your location for your subjects, of course, go with it. See, today, I'd like you to have a look. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've got 9 cameras active at this moment. Am I right? Are you able to see all the 9 camera thumbnails? Are they all visible to you? Are you in that mode, Ashish?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll put on in thumbnail. Just
Yeah. Please go into gallery view.
yeah.
Everybody in
Yeah.
gallery view, can I request everyone to go into gallery view where you will be able to see all the thumbnails. I see 9 cameras active at the moment. Are we okay with that? Right. Now have a look at the screen and don't tell me in your mind which person's outfit color stands out the most against the background out of everybody over here.
The Prakash Wadhwani.
I'm switching my camera now. I'm coming a little close up. Do you still have the same view? Do you still feel the same?
No.
No, I'm just asking. Who do you feel stands out the most? I mean, like, whose color seems the best?
Ashish, I guess.
Ashish. What color is Ashish wearing?
Maroon
Okay.
against a
Okay.
gray background.
Now see what he's wearing and against the background. Do you understand? It stands out. See what I'm wearing. There's a reason why I've worn blue. Ashish, that day also when we went in the morning, I wore blue, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a reason why I wore blue. We are going early morning. Although it's going to be a blue sky, I know that this blue stands out beautifully, contrasts beautifully against a blue sky and against those mountains. It contrasts wonderfully. And in that warm light, that warm glow of the early morning sun, it just looks amazing. There's a reason why I stick to reds and blues early morning. If I had to wear an earthy color, like a mountain color, maybe a light brown or maybe a light green, it would probably end up blending with the mountains over there at Bandar al Khairan. Okay, so then there won't be enough of contrast between me, that is the subject, and the background. You need your foreground, that's your main subject, to stand out against your background. That is very, very important. It's very critical. Guys, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Hope Ashish, you get the answer for this to your question.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody further more, or we can conclude the session?
If you're looking at
I
me
just
right
want to
now,
say a few words.
excuse me, if you're looking at me right now, I'm using my phone camera right now, my phone front camera. So that's giving a softer image and softer hues, okay? If you look at my t-shirt, it's not so contrasty, it's not so saturated. But if I switch to my laptop camera, which is more of a wide angle, you'll notice that the blue is far more saturated. You're seeing much more. Okay, that's the only difference. I'm using one as a wide angle view and I'm using one as a frontal view. You can have different cameras and all, whatever, it's up to you. But the colors, the color scheme which you're having, it should separate your foreground from your background. Always remember, very, very important. If you do not have the option of choosing your colors of your subjects with your background, with whatever you have, then at least when you're shooting, position your subject against a background that contrasts. Remember, there's something which we technically in photography we call figure to ground ratio, FGR, in which your subject stands out against your background. There's a clear demarcation between them. That should be there.
Yes, Samir, you wanted to say something?
No, I would like to say a few words. I don't have any question, or I would say I have multiple questions, but that won't fit in today's session because I am a beginner. So I am, I got lot of questions. I would just like to say a few words about today's presentation of Prakash ji. Prakash ji, excellent presentation, very professional, very informative. Thank you so much. I have been knowing Prakash ji for last so many years. He has been associated with our Muscat Marathi Mitra Mandal, then also our open mic singer group, as a sound engineer, as a photographer, as a videographer. So many roles he played, and many of us may not know that he is also a very, very good singer himself. So since I am myself an amateur singer, I would like to link myself with Prakash ji in that context. He sings very well. So Prakash ji, thank you so much for your presentation today, and wishing you all the very best for your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Sameerji. I'm overwhelmed with all your kind words and this praise you've lavished on me. Guys, I don't know, you all probably must be knowing Sameerji, so you all know that he's a fantastic singer. And like you mentioned, we've met on several occasions and have had the pleasure of hearing him sing several times. If you all haven't heard him, please go right now and hear him.
Thank you,
So
thank
I
you,
would,
Prakash.
yeah, I would like to hand over the entire session to Ashish. Ashish, if you can do the formalities, balance formalities.
Yeah. Thank you, Yogesh. And before I begin my formal vote of thanks, just couple of minutes, I would like to say about Prakash ji. Actually, I have seen multiple times in our ISC multipurpose hall working on music or light. But actually, when we met during the Bandaral Khairan, the way you explained the importance of foreground, background, adding human element to give the depth perspective. So that has really changed my photography. And I must say your family is also lucky because having such a great portrait photographer in the family, your daughter, wife, all are so lucky because they will have so many fantastic memories clicked by you. And in fact, you said OCD, but I would say it's a perfection or like Tendulkar, unless he practices that shot straight drive 10,000 times. Because I have seen, like I observe while, because I have attended so many sessions, I think the first speaker using the microphone, though you work on light and sound, but it is so important. The angle of your camera, you're using the wide angle and the zoom depending on the requirement. Background is blurred and it's not complete plain white. The furniture brown complements with the white as well as the blue. So all these small things, even though you explain at the end of the session, I was experiencing that how to make the presentation without using PPT. I think this is the best presentation I have ever attended. So really thankful, and your discipline shows in each and everything what you are doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashish ji. Thank you so much.
And I'll now start with the formal thank you. I, Ashish Subedar, on behalf of Ranga Pratimanche, extend my most sincere thanks to His Majesty and Oman authorities. I am immensely thankful to Mr. Prakash Wadhwani, who spared time from his busiest schedule to grace the occasion. Today, we had an opportunity to learn more about portrait photography. This surely will be going to encourage us to practice and experiment portrait photography. I also extend a hearty vote of thanks to our mentors, Mr. Manjunath Pai, Mr. Ashish Chavan, and other friends for their support. A special mention to 4M committee for their support for such events. I would also like to thank the people who work behind the scenes to make this event happen. Shukran.
Yes, you can stop recording now and then we go.
Yogesh ji, Ashish ji, thank you so much, everybody from 4M Group, for having me over here. It's been a pleasure being with you all, and we have a long association on a different level by way of light and sound. Today, it's been by photography, once again, light and sound. And thank you so much once again for having me. It's been a real pleasure connecting with you all.
Thank you, sir.
Shall we sign out, guys?
Yeah, sure. Ashish,
Should I stop the recording from my side also?
Yeah, you stop recording.
Okay.